Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of The Green Room. So excited today. We have special guests with us, Pastor Wayne and Pastor David, that will be answering some questions for us today. If you did not get a chance to check out the message, please go back and look at it online. Super excited about this group that we have here today. I will be asking questions to them off camera, but you'll have their beautiful faces to look at for the remainder of the episode. Thank you for joining us today. The first question is, which of the 4 devotions have you personally found most challenging to practice?
Well, I think fellowship is, as much as I love it, it's hard because people have unique problems and issues that they face, and often they go to the wrong thing sometimes to try to be in fellowship. They think everybody has to be perfect, and they're not. And I've been guilty of that. I thought, why would people have these kind of problems? And then I realized we all have those kind of problems, but underneath it all, you've got to keep choosing to love people. You've got to keep choosing to see them as beautiful.
Another thing that I thought about was in our culture where we're from, fellowship can mean a lot of different things. And I feel like it's easy for us to get into the habit of just thinking that hanging out or eating or just being together is fellowship, but the aspect of inviting the Lord into that presence and finding the good of those relationships and God's purpose in those things is sometimes the challenge. Sometimes when we're together, it's not really fellowship, and I think to remind ourselves of why we're together and what God's purpose is for us together is a significant and kind of challenging thing. I would agree with that.
So good. It's important. Fellowship is what Jesus did with the disciples. He broke bread with them. The next question is, how can I apply breaking bread in my small group? Does that mean taking communion or just eating together? I've heard both.
Well, I think it can be either. It has that in Scripture. They were breaking bread. They're having meals together from house to house. But they were gathered around Jesus. And so the reason they were together was because of Jesus. So it just stands to right that they should remember him around a meal. So we do things like when we have our friends over, we always have the elements there. We have some crackers, we have some grape juice ready, and we don't always initiate it. Doesn't always go that way. But when it seems right, I'll say, what do you guys think about us just breaking bread together? And so we encourage our people to do that from house to house. It's not something just reserved for the clergy. It's something that said they broke bread in their homes with glad and sincere hearts. And the only way their hearts can be glad and sincere is if they're focused on Jesus. One of the ways we do that is by remembering him in communion.
We've tried at times to just help facilitate in small groups and home groups, just having the elements there and adding that on. It's important for us to remember that a lot of Jesus' ministry was actually around food. He was at a table with people many times, and some very intimate and profound things happened. And it wasn't just the communion elements that were there. But I think at the end, in the Last Supper, he was deliberate in saying, "Do this in remembrance of me." So that's why I think we would want to add that to any meal that we'd have together, any opportunity that we had to be together as a group of people, as a small group, to just add those elements and really take a moment to remember Jesus in those things when we break bread.
So good. The next question is, I've struggled to feel planted in a church community. Am I doing something wrong, or have I not yet found the right church?
There's a scripture that says when you come together, everybody brings something. They bring a psalm, a hymn, a spiritual song. And I think there can be a motivation of, I want to go to church to get fed. I want to go to a church to have some need I have met. But if you reverse that and say, what do I have to give? And then your attitude is, I'm going to give whatever I have, and I'm going to serve with it. And that is very attractive. People are drawn to people that seem to be giving and not just, I'm going to give you an audition, and if you don't tick all my boxes, I'm leaving. No, it's the guy that walks in and says, I'm a carpenter. Is there anything I can do to help? It's that kind of stuff that draws people to you. And so I think it's a walking toward being planted rather than waiting to be accepted. So it's an offering of yourself. And I think that's the essence of being a servant. And I think the best churches are the ones that are full of servant-hearted people.
I've thought about just what happens in church, in a typical church service, if we're just talking about a service, and how different that is from every other aspect of a person's weekly life experience. We're going to work and we're engaging with people one-on-one. Maybe we work in the public even, but we're not doing anything that in some ways is even remotely the same as being in a worship service with music and a lot of energy and this sort of really digging in together with a large group of people trying to find God together. So I think one thing I would tell the person asking that question is it takes time. It just takes time. I think the thing that really causes us to find our home in a church is relationships, and relationships aren't going to come quickly. The things that you can buy into, well, I like this church, I like what the preacher said, or I liked the music or something. Those are attractional kind of things for a new person, but the relational aspect takes time. And I would just encourage anyone to give it time and to give themselves to seeing if they can build some relationships and not make decisions too quickly. Well, it just doesn't feel like this is a place for me. I think it takes a little more investment than just a Sunday morning just to see how the service went.
Our final question is, why is prophecy important in the church? Has it stopped?
Well, Old Testament prophecy was under law, and it was more about judgment. People were afraid of the prophets because they were speaking words of judgment, and that was their job. Jesus came and changed everything. He fulfilled the law. He didn't do away with it. He fulfilled it. And then he brought in the era of grace. And so the new covenant is one of grace. And instead of prophecy now being about judgment, he says in 1 Corinthians 14, no, it's about edification, exhortation, and comfort. It's about those three things. And there's no less need now for those things than there ever has been. And then it says in 1 Corinthians 14, it says, desire all the gifts, but especially prophecy. You wonder, well, why? Well, because prophecy edifies the church. And I think God puts a premium on those ministries that edify and build up the church. So I don't see a church that doesn't need building up and edifying. Now, I see a lot of error. I see a lot of people moving in the prophetic that maybe shouldn't be. And that's why in 1 Thessalonians 5, it says, examine the words carefully to see if they be of the Lord or not. And so I think if the prophetic word is true, it can bear scrutiny. But I believe with all my heart that we need prophecy today as much or more than ever, because we're in a time that a lot of folks are discouraged. A lot of people have been beat down, not built up. And a lot of folks have no sense of comfort in their life. Those very things are the things that prophecy does. So I think it is for today. I don't think it's passed away. I believe it will pass away one day when we see Jesus, because when we see him, there'll be no need for the gifts of the Spirit because we'll have him. But until that time comes, I think we need to be good Bereans. We need to know what the Bible says about prophecy. We need to be able to examine prophecy. We need to be able to talk about it. And those giving prophetic words need to be willing to let those words be examined without being defensive. So I feel, from my perspective, as I travel around the world in different places, the need for true prophetic words that are biblically sound and are coming from servants' hearts, those words are needed now more than ever. So I would say if you've been hurt with the prophetic, or if someone's got it wrong, apply some grace. Forgive them if you need to, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't discard all prophecy because a few people have messed up. Like a lot of folks hear about that famous preacher that falls into error. What they don't hear about is the thousands and thousands of pastors that get up and serve their congregation every day, from sweeping the floors to cleaning the toilets to preaching on Sunday morning. So we wouldn't discard all of the pastoral ministry because one messed up. So I encourage you, if you've been hurt, forgive and ask the Lord to help you move on and stay open. Stay open to the prophetic, because it says clearly in 1 Thessalonians 5, again, it says, despise not prophecy, but rather examine it. And the reason you would despise it is that maybe you've been hurt or someone didn't do it right and you judged it rather than giving grace. So I encourage you, if you've been put off by it, don't throw it out. Stay open, because one word from the Lord can change everything in your life. And you need to hear from the Lord. And God has got not special super people. He's got regular, ordinary people. That's the beauty. He puts his treasure in these earthen vessels. And so it's not just the big famous people. He gives these gifts to people that he decides to give them to. So be discerning. Don't swallow everything. I think it's like eating a watermelon back home in Arkansas. We eat the watermelon and we spit out the seeds. So we receive a prophetic word, that part of it that we can receive, and that we don't think we can receive, we just put it on a shelf and we don't discard it, but we just let it be there until God gives us more revelation. But we aren't in an era of judgment. We're in an era of grace. So remember that.
I think I want to speak maybe more experientially on this. Many years ago, I was getting before a church service where there was going to be some prophetic words given, and I knew some would be given for me. I went out and I just went to a trail and I just walked and prayed. And I was really specific just in seeking the Lord about very important personal things in my life. And really poured my heart out to the Lord, gave everything I could think, prayed until I couldn't think of anything else to pray. Later that evening, I went to the service, and the ministers who ministered over me, it was as if they had gone on that walk with me. And it was remarkable. I knew that there was no possible way guests from somewhere else coming to our church would have any idea what my personal prayer time was with the Lord. And so I guess what I would say is, I don't know that there's any more confirming, reassuring feeling than a right word at a given time to let a person know that God knows you. And it's a powerful ministry. And who doesn't want the sense that God knows me? So I think we, in the midst of some abuse here and there, people getting it wrong here and there, we've got to know that God knows us. And that's been one of the most reassuring things about prophetic ministry in my life.
The message today, the beautiful church, was inspired by two things. One, I was celebrating my 52nd anniversary with my wife. And as I looked across her on that little restaurant in Memphis, Tennessee, I remembered a verse in chapter 4, verse 7 of the Song of Solomon, and the verse was simply Jesus speaking to his bride, the church. He was saying, "You're altogether beautiful and without flaw." And at that moment, that came into my mind, and two things were happening. One, I was seeing June that way, my wife. She's altogether beautiful, and I did not see any flaw. Now, she may see flaws in herself, but in that moment, I could see none. I could just see that she was beautiful. And then the other thing that was happening is I was realizing, as part of the bride of Christ, that's how Jesus sees me. He says, what I see, when Jesus looks at me, he sees me as beautiful and without flaw. Does that mean that I don't get it wrong, that I don't mess up, that I don't sin? No, it doesn't mean any of that. It's the filter that Jesus looks through. And as I thought about that, and I realized, if you go online or if you hear the news media talking about the church these days, it's mostly negative. It comes across as an ugly church. not a beautiful church. And it's almost like a piling on of all these armchair TikTokers, and which I understand maybe where they're coming from. But I believe with all my heart that the way Jesus looks at his bride is the way that we need to look at his bride, the church, as beautiful and without flaw. When I look through those lenses, then I can put up with a whole lot of things, and I can let my love cover a multitude of sins. I can be patient. I can be kind, even when I'm responding to someone that's neither of those. And that's what being a beautiful church is about. And I hope this message inspires a number of people that hear it to be that kind of person, to come into church and be the church outside the walls, and to let all those that are watching, maybe all the non-believers that are watching, all those that are ready to judge the church, when they look at us, let them see us loving God and loving one another and seeing each other as beautiful and not as competitors, not as ugly, not as flawed, but we see each other as beautiful. And I think Zion City is a beautiful church. And one of the reasons I believe that is because I see the love that you share with each other, the love that you have for the Lord. And I believe that's one of the reasons that God is giving you a broader influence and a broader appeal. It's not because of how clever your messages are or how wonderful your worship is. It's because you're looking at the church through the lens that Jesus looks through. You see each other as beautiful and without flaw. And that's the church that will cause people to come and say, I can see that God, you've been with God. I want to be a part of what you're doing. So I encourage you, start to think of the church as beautiful and without flaw. And before you know it, you'll believe that, and you'll start to live that way. And the way that some people bother you, it just won't bother you like it did. And you'll get on and you'll have real fellowship that is meaningful and lasting. God bless you, and thank you for listening to the message. I hope it was meaningful to you, and I want to give a shout out to all those that gave their hearts to Jesus across the campuses today. It was a bunch, and I was so thrilled about it. So thanks for having us. God bless you. Maybe we'll see you another time.